Okay, so Microsoft, I'm sitting in front of a desk with 4 computers. The one to my left is hooked to my TV. And I mostly want to play media over there. And the one sitting in front of me has Second Life and my web browser. And it runs OBS when I make these videos. And the computer to my right is where I have been playing a lot of media and where my guest sits when they come over. I call it the alt computer because it's also where I load my Second Life alt accounts when I want to test scripts and such like that. So over there is where on the right computer, alt computer, right computer, not the political alt-right, but the alt computer, is where SpaceX, Starbase Live is always over there. And a while ago, the alt computer decided it was time for its Windows update. So I didn't have anything important going on over there, and I let it update. Meanwhile, I was talking on the phone, and I wasn't paying a whole lot of attention, and then that computer over there goes diddle-ding because it wanted to update, so I let it do that. So when it came back, I didn't expect it. When it came rebooted, I didn't expect anything to come in from over there because if I don't tell the computer to make some noise, I don't expect it to make any noise. Well, somebody started talking over there from the alt computer, and I was like, WTF, mate? Where in the hell is that noise coming from? Well, it was the alt computer. And it was Microsoft Edge. It wanted to update. It updated Microsoft Edge. And I guess it wanted me to even set it as default browser. Well, no. I use Chrome as default browser. So, shut up, Microsoft Edge. I don't want you. Maybe one day I will, but it's not going to be because you wanted it to be wanted. Now, the other thing is this guy. Windows 11. My computers are all i7s from Dell. One is a small form factor Dell case. One is a generic, almost, AT form factor, mini tower, that uses standard power supplies. And the third one is a mini tower with a proprietary 8-pin power motherboard, also from Dell. So I have 3 Dell computers which are not entirely compatible with each other, but anyway, they're all running Windows 10. And they're from 2011 to 2013. So Microsoft feels like and all of these computers seem to have a slightly different build of Windows 10. And so they all update on slightly different schedules. And every now and then, one of them decides that it's time for them to tell me that it's time for me to upgrade to Windows 11. But oh, by the way, your computers don't qualify for upgrades to Windows 11. Because you know why. I don't have a TPM chip. Or I don't have a TPM2 chip. Whichever it is. So I can't upgrade to Windows 11 officially unless you download the ISO and install setup with install server switch or whatever the heck that is. I wrote it down somewhere. But then they say, you can do this, but be aware that your computers will not qualify for updates. Well, you're already telling us we don't qualify for updates if we're on Windows 10 by October the 14th, 2025. So we've got to do something by then, right? Meanwhile, you're going to shove ads in our face to use Edge as our default browser because you updated Edge. Well, I don't give a fuck about Edge. And you're going to tell us to use Windows 11 when you tell us we can't even qualify for Windows 11. Now, I realize this is just a money grab for Microsoft, but I suppose they probably have deals with all the primary computer manufacturers who would just love for us to upgrade. And by that they mean throw away our computers and buy new ones. Well, I got news for you. I had some computers from 2008. And last Christmas, I upgraded. Well, my upgrades are refurbished computers sold by a third-party seller from Walmart. And so I'd got two computers that previous Christmas. And now here we are at almost 2 Christmases later. So 2 of those computers are 2 years old for me now. And this third one, which I recently got sometime in the middle of this year, are all Windows 10 computers that are i7s that from 2011 to 13, which don't qualify. So to me, they're new computers. And so I spent the money to get 3 computers, one of which my son bought me. So, and then ex-wife bought the other one, and then ex-wife bought the other one. So, we have spent money to upgrade. So thank y'all very much. We have spent our money to upgrade, and now y'all, Microsoft, and so far only Microsoft, but I guarantee you it will also turn out to be Google's fault because Chrome, when Windows 8.1 went out of support, Chrome said, well, we're not going to support your computer anymore because it's too old, I guess. Windows, your operating system, Chrome won't install any more updates on 8.1. So that's why all of this upgrading happened already. Well, it just got done happening, and now Microsoft wants us to upgrade to Windows 11. It's just too soon, y'all. Why are you badgering us so fucking soon after I just upgraded to Windows 10? Well, I guess for you guys, Windows 2011. See, it's kind of funny because my old computers were 2008. And so in 2011, I would never have been able to afford an i7 because an i7 computer at that time was well over $1,000. And I have never paid $1,000 for a computer. $300 is the most I've ever paid for a computer. And these last three were $179 and $158, and this last one was $220 because it came with 2 screens, which felt like they were practically free. So $220 in recent times is the most I've paid for a computer, and ever $300. So I would never pay $1,000 for an i7. Well, now you can buy a 2011 released i7 for, $179. So it seems like I've got a lot of hardware, but it's older, barely used hardware that's really well worth buying. But Microsoft is going to make us buy it all again because of TPS, which I don't give a fuck about. And now there's a push for hardware keys, which I don't give a fuck about. You're changing something you know to something you have, which can be taken away from you, by the way. So you got your security key on your key ring. Somebody takes your key ring away from you. They've got the thing that you have that is used to authorize. So what the fuck good is a passkey? It's not any more secure if it can be taken away from you. So TPS and passkeys and all that kind of bullshit, to me, it's just some kind of gimmick that gets these folks more money. So I was the holdout when I bought a computer in 2008, and years and years went by. My computer, which was running fine on Windows XP, by the way, until Second Life said we're going to have inventory-based marketplace management. So, of course, I had a marketplace page where I sell all the products that I make in Second Life, which I would no longer be able to manage unless I had a viewer with inventory managed marketplace enabled. But Linden Labs said we're not going to support Windows XP anymore. So you have to upgrade. So I upgraded to Windows 10. And my CPU idle went to 50%. So I said, that's not going to work. So I went to Windows 8.1, where my CPU idle was 2%. So now I realize that the older hardware like Core 2 Duo and Dual Core just suck on Windows 10. Maybe if you had 16 gigs of RAM, which who would want to spend money to buy 16 gigs of super old RAM that works on Core 2 Duo. That's not me. I'm not going to buy it. It's got 4 gigs max of memory on the Core 2 Duo, and it's slow as piss. So I'm not going to upgrade that to Windows 10, and I'd still have to upgrade it on October 25th to Windows 11, which probably is not going to run too damn good on my Core 2 Duo. So I'll probably end up with at least one more i7, or God knows when I'll be able to afford an i9. So it's an upgrade war. And some people will say, okay, well, why don't you just switch to Linux? Well, I would like for you folks to go and try to switch to Linux on a Core 2 Duo or a dual core Pentium that's not a Core 2, which is a generation just before Core 2 Duo. Because the NVIDIA drivers and even the Intel drivers, if your hardware is too old, are not supported by Wayland or even Xorg. So if you want to switch to Linux, you better make damn well sure that your hardware is not so old that the drivers are not supported anymore, because if you switch to a modern Linux, you will not be able to get drivers for your old hardware. So switch to Linux? Well, you can't. Because if you're talking about old hardware, the drivers are not supported. You may say, well, if your machines are that old, you should buy new ones. Well, I got to tell you what, that Core 2 Duo machine I had was the longest lasting, most stable machine I'd ever had before I bought the i7s, which I don't know what their longevity and stability is going to be like long term, because they haven't had that long. But that Core 2 Duo on XP was super stable, and it hardly ever had to reboot it, and it just worked. It was a good damn machine. So it's slowed down in comparison to the i7s. I'm glad to have some i7s. I'd like to have instantaneously fast hardware with infinite storage space. That was what my high school teacher told me. I told him I wanted so many memory and so much speed and so and so. And he said, well, you're not dreaming big enough, Michael. If you're gonna dream about the kind of computer you want, just say that you want instantaneous execution and infinite storage. And I was like, you know what? You're right. I want instantaneous execution and infinite storage. But I can't afford any of those. Not that they exist, but the latest and the greatest, sure, I'd love to have. But Microsoft is making it hard. If I wanted to continue to use my old, and I air quote, old hardware, because this old hardware is good hardware. And now it's going to become e-waste. We're just making more e-waste. I've had an Athlon too, that was my daughter's old computer, and it's got it broke years ago, and she replaced it with a laptop. So that machine sat around in the garage for years, not doing anything. And since I had a bunch of screens that I had, because I'm kind of obsessed with screens, I got 8 screens right now. I decided I had 4 screens, and I said, well, I've got this other screen, and there's some other cases. What if I had so I went looking around, and I found the Athlon, and I scrounged around and put a power supply in there that I didn't think I even had. And my son had an old hard drive that he had landed on my desk and said, hey, why don't you see if you can do something with this hard drive? And I said, well, why? What's wrong with it? And he's, well, it's broke. And I said, well, if it's broke, what makes you think I'm going to do anything with it? So it just sat on the desk under a bunch of Rubik's Cubes for several months. And then, so I started messing around with all these extra screens that I don't need, but they look cool. And so that Athlon was the first, really the only case laying around that had any processor in it that was worth thinking about, and it barely was, and it only had 2 gigs of RAM in it. And I scrounged around, and I found out that son's old computer that was the Prescott D, the heater, had the same kind of memory in it. So I took one of those. Nobody's ever going to use that thing again, Prescott D. I took the memory out. It had the same kind of memory the Athlon had, so I doubled memory in the Athlon. And put Windows 8.1 on it because, yeah, it's not fast enough to run Windows 10. And it struggled along, and I had kept rebooting every couple of times a day because I had a questionable power supply and a questionable hard drive. And I found one stick of memory that was bad, and I replaced that. And it still kept rebooting a couple of times a day, so I retired it. Now the Athlon is in one of these empty cases sitting around here. And I have a feeling the Athlon would probably be more suited to Windows XP, but you can't use Windows XP anymore because it's not supported, and I'm sure it would be a security disaster if you would put it on the internet. So we're not going to be using that Windows XP. So these old hardware that could be running, you can't use them. It's the software industry, primarily Microsoft and Google, who are obsoleting these hardware that could be used. So now they're e-waste. Thank you, Microsoft. Thank you, Google. And even thank you, Linux, for not supporting the drivers that could run these old hardware, especially the video is what I'm talking about. The old video cards from NVIDIA and Intel with unsupported drivers, unless you want to use them in software mode, which nobody does. They're too fucking slow in software mode. You need hardware acceleration or they're not worth anything. So thanks, guys, for removing the repositories that support old drivers. So if you think, yep, Microsoft evil, Google evil, switch to Linux, you can't do it with old hardware. And if you're going to use new hardware, it's going to come with Windows on it anyway. Sure, you can buy new hardware with Linux, or I don't know if you can buy it with FreeBSD on it, but you've just killed the point. If I have to have new hardware, so I wish you guys, especially in the FreeBSD development teams, would consider that we have to have support for old drivers if you're going to continue. And they're not even, these machines are not even that old. 2008 is not that long ago, y'all. Oh, shit. I guess I'm getting old. 2008, what's that? 2010 would be 14 years ago, 16 years ago. And it's fixed to be 2025 in a few days, y'all. So I guess that'll be 17 years. A 2008 computer is 17 years old as of next January. Okay, so I guess that is pretty old. But, you know, it's not like it's an 8088 or anything like that. DOS kind of computers from the 80s. Not asking to go back that far. You could emulate it if you're going to go back that far. I know we've got some folks out there in the YouTube world who just love to spotlight old hardware. Shout out to LGR and Adrian for doing all those old PCs and C64s and whatnot. But if you're going to use a machine for a personal machine, we're kind of stuck with being forced to get upgraded. Thank you, Microsoft, for forcing me to upgrade. Thank you, Google, for forcing me to upgrade. Thank you for FreeBSD and Linux for making me forced to upgrade. Y'all probably don't know anything about FreeBSD, but it is not a Linux. A BSD is, I think it's Berkeley Standard Development. It's closer to the Unix native than the Linux kernel. The Linux kernel is not Unix because of intellectual property regulations, patents, copyrights, and crap like that. Anyway, so Linux was developed because we couldn't actually copy Unix. And you've got OpenBSD and FreeBSD and NetBSD, which are all sort of more like the original, I think, Unix than Linux is. So back in the 90s, I got drawn into the first Unix-like thing that I tried was Slackware 3.5. I didn't like it that much, and I set it up as a router. We had 3 Windows workstations, and we got it working, but I didn't really care that much for Slackware. Somehow or another, through my reading on the internet, I discovered FreeBSD. I don't remember which the first version was, but the version that went the longest as a router and web server was FreeBSD 7.0. And then it came to the point where after so many years of running 7.0, I needed to upgrade some drivers. Couldn't be done unless you upgraded to FreeBSD 7.1. They said 7.0 is terrible. You should upgrade anyway. And of course, you know, best practice is you probably ought to back up everything. Well, I decided to repartition and put 7.1 on the new partition. Well, I ended up losing the partition. But the reason I lost the partition was because, well, I didn't back up, but I didn't have anything to back up on. But when I what happened was I had the FreeBSD 7 hard drive, and the motherboard, which was a PC chips. I hate you. I'm sorry you ever made any hardware, because all of these PC chips and motherboards blew up. Mostly the caps went bad. You all know about the caps fiasco. And then the switching power supplies on the motherboard just, I mean, literally went kaboom. And so I scrounged around for another machine and put the hard drive in that machine. And the drivers I had on 7.0 didn't support any of the NE2000 class network cards that I had in the house at the time. So while I was able to boot FreeBSD 7.0, I couldn't support any of the network cards on 7.0. That was when they said, you're going to have to upgrade to FreeBSD 7.1. So in deciding to repartition and on, anyway, I lost the whole partition crap. And but I ended up in FreeBSD 7.1 eventually. And anyway, it just got to be too much of a hassle, and I switched to WRT, DDWRT, and I had gotten one of those blue Linksys WRT routers, hardware router, and I ended up eventually switching to the firmware to DDWRT, and that was fine. But then I didn't have a FreeBSD machine after that, and a few years went by, and I got mad at all of this Windows business, upgrading Windows 10, and which was too slow, and Windows 8.1, which would do, but now is out of support anyway. So I kept getting ads on the bathroom computer Windows 8.1 is no longer supported. And then Chrome, I said, well, I knew this was coming. Eventually, what would happen is somebody would say your web browser is no longer supported, so we can't serve you this web page. Well, what I didn't expect was Chrome to say, oh, we're not going to support your operating system anymore, so you can't get any more Chrome updates. So I got pissed off at Microsoft and Google for forcing me to do all these updates. So I decided to put FreeBSD 13 on the Pentium dual core. No, I was using the laptop in the bathroom at the time, and that was where I was getting the most Windows 8.1 is unsupported crap. So I decided, fuck it, I'll put FreeBSD 13 on the laptop. So I did that, and I had to struggle through a bunch of hoops to get the Intel built-in to run on the hardware acceleration, because there's just drivers. You don't come install the right drivers by default. So come here. Doggy wants to get into the act. So you guys get a bonus host. Doggy. So I put GNOME on there, and I didn't like the version of GNOME that ended up being in the available with that package manager. And so I switched to KDE. Well, KDE was just a little heavy, so I decided to switch to XFCE. Or is it XFC? Anyway, the driver that came with XFCE did not like my laptop screen, and it just went black with a bunch of the top 10% was active, and the rest was just a bunch of random lines. So somehow or another, I managed to log in from another computer and disable XFCE and switch back to KDE, and it was started working after that. So I was stuck with FreeBSD 13 and KDE on the laptop for a while. And then when the Athlon was too fucking slow, I decided, hold on, somebody ding me. Oh, okay. Hey, Linda. You'll probably never see this video, but hey. Anyway, so I had for a little while I had 3 machines on FreeBSD. I had the dual core on FreeBSD 14, by the way, because between the time that I installed FreeBSD 13 on the laptop and getting pissed off with Windows on the dual core, a version went by. So FreeBSD 14. So I put FreeBSD 14 on the dual core, and I ended up with 14.1 on the Athlon. Well, I had two built-in Intel chipsets on the laptop and the dual core. And I managed to get both of those working under hardware acceleration. Well, the Athlon had a built-in NVIDIA, and I could not get the drivers to support that NVIDIA card, the built-in. And so I read, and finally I found if you'll just install FreeBSD 11, then the drivers for Xorg in that version support the old API for the old NVIDIA drivers. So I installed FreeBSD 11 on the Athlon, and that went okay. I had to try a couple of times because for some reason I couldn't read some portions of the ISO during setup, but I did manage to get past that, and I went to install the NVIDIA driver on the Athlon. Well, I couldn't because I had to upgrade the libraries. So I went to logged into the repositories for FreeBSD 11, and guess what? The repositories for FreeBSD 11 have been deleted. So here's another. Well, you should switch to Linux or whatever. Well, okay. Yeah, I got enamored with FreeBSD, so rather than switching to Linux, I was switching to FreeBSD, and FreeBSD doesn't support old drivers, so even the version I was switching to that did support the old drivers, the repositories have been deleted. So here's your whole long blown out fiasco of the industry, software industry, and in its entirety have decided, fuck y'all, upgrade y'all shit and pay this amount. So thank you, industry, for upgrading and causing a shitload of e-waste. Love you. Bye.